On the night the
Our
world
new swan
lost
queen,
her, the
Nina
phone
Sayers.
never stopped
Wanna be
ringing.
perfect.
A locked bedroom door, a light that wouldn't go out, a housekeeper whispering into the receiver as sirens clawed their way through Los Angeles. August 5th, 1962. They would call it an overdose.
I want to see passion. Attack it!
They would call it
You need to relax. The black swan for you.
What
happened to my sweet girl?
Not neatly, not cleanly, not for a woman who could hold an entire nation's breath just by walking into a room. She had become a poster long before she became a person in most people's minds. A smile lacquered in studio light. A laugh rehearsed until it sounded spontaneous. A dress sewn so tight it had to be stitched onto her skin, glittering like poured mercury as she sang to a president in front of the world. Millions watched. Millions decided they knew her. Millions were wrong, because behind the sparkle there was a clock that never let her sleep. Pages and pages of dialogue she was terrified to forget. Directors who loved the myth and flinched at the woman, pills to quiet the noise, more pills to wake from the quiet. Days that began with promises and ended with apologies. The studio owned the calendar. The public owned the body. What was left for her to own? She tried to take it back. Lessons, coaches, a new company with her name on the door. "I'm an actress," she would insist, as if the world might hear it differently the 10th time. Some did. Most didn't. To them she was the joke they kept repeating, the wish they kept projecting, the fantasy that made everyone else feel bolder. The line between being adored and being consumed is thin. She lived on that line. So when the headlines arrived, dead at 36, the country performed sorrow like a ritual. Candles, tears, the same photographs printed again until the paper bled. The verdict was clinical, the rumors operatic. Lovers with bigger offices, men with bigger secrets, files that stayed sealed, neighbors who remembered lights, voices, cars, a door that was locked when it shouldn't have been.
If you've nothing more to say,
Maybe it was
praise,
chaos.
Captain.
Maybe it was carelessness. Maybe it was something darker. What everyone agreed on was this: the brightest star had burned out alone. But a life doesn't begin with a legend. It begins with a name. Before Marilyn, there was Norma Jean, a child the city barely noticed, a girl who learned early that cameras could be kinder than the people. If you've only met the myth, you don't know her at all. To understand how a woman could become an icon and still die unheard, we have to leave the boulevards and the billboards and go back to the rooms where no one was listening, the rooms of her childhood. That's where the story really starts. That's where the fractures first appeared, and that's where the light, strangely, began. Before she was a face on every magazine stand, she was Norma Jean Mortensen, born on June 1st, 1926, in Los Angeles. The world knew her as radiant, effortless, immortal. But her beginnings were fragile, stitched together with absence and fear. Her father vanished before she ever knew his face. Some said he was a man named Charles Stanley Gifford, a co-worker of her mother's. Others insisted it was someone else. What's certain is that Norma Jean grew up without him. When classmates asked, she invented stories. He was away, he was important, he'd be back. He never came. The empty chair at the table became her first ghost. Her mother, Gladys, battled inner storms no one could calm. Mental illness shadowed her days. Sometimes she was tender, brushing Norma Jean's hair with quiet care. Other times, darkness took over, and the little girl would be left frightened, hiding from voices her mother swore were real. By the time Norma Jean was 7, Gladys was institutionalized, declared unfit to care for her own child. The state stepped in. The word orphan attached itself like a brand. From there, the shuffle began. A family would take her in, smile for the paperwork, then send her away when money grew tight or tempers grew thin. She lived with foster parents, friends of friends, sometimes strangers who saw her as an extra pair of hands rather than a child who needed protection. Each move carried a suitcase smaller than her dreams. She'd learned to never unpack too deeply. One placement was especially cruel. A boarder in the house took advantage of her when she was barely a teenager. She told an adult, hoping someone would save her. Instead, she was scolded, told not to lie, told to behave. The shame sank deep. It wasn't the last time she'd feel abandoned after asking for help. By the time she was 16, life had written her into a corner. She was facing another trip back to the orphanage. Terrified of that fate, she married her neighbor's son, James Downey. Not for love, but for survival. It was escape disguised as romance. She became a wife before she had
Once upon a time, there was a prince.
while other
He was
teenagers
handsome,
were at the
but he was lonely.
She was
Oh,
learning how to
very
cook
lonely.
dinner in a borrowed
Then one, she wasn't lonely
wondering
either.
if this was
And the prince
only
thought it would be rather nice to have the showgirl maybe look over his etchings.
inside that fragile
That
girl,
was the way he wrote the
something
script.
refused
Where
to break.
deeds can say
She
so much
laughed
more.
louder than her
That's
wounds.
just
She
terrible.
stared
Going to
into
happen.
mirrors and practiced the
I
smile
would
she
fall
wished
in
the
love
world
with
would
you.
give back to her.
Both times.
At school, classmates dismissed her
You
as
better
shy,
watch out.
plain,
Dowager, that's your mother?
forgettable.
Mother-in-law.
But a
Oh, that's
teacher
worse.
said
You want me
presence
to hide?
lingered longer than anyone else's.
I love you.
Even then, there was a spark.
Oh,
she
gosh,
couldn't
you
hide.
bright.
You're stepping on those bounds. How dare you?
But it carved in her a hunger, a desperate need to be seen, to be loved, to prove she was more than the girl people kept sending away. That hunger would carry her out of anonymity. It would turn Norma Jean into Marilyn Monroe. The war changed everything. Factories buzzed with urgency, and women filled the spaces men had left behind. Norma Jean was one of them, barely out of childhood, hair tied back, hands stained with machine grease. She worked at a munitions plant, just another face in the endless line of women keeping the war machine alive. But one day, a photographer walked in. He wasn't looking for a star, just propaganda shots to boost morale. Then he saw her. Something about the way she tilted her chin, the shy but luminous smile. It was as if the camera had been waiting for her. That picture made its way into magazines, and soon the phone rang with a question she'd never considered. Would she like to model? For the first time, the world looked at her and didn't see a foster child, a forgotten girl, a frightened bride. They saw possibility. They saw beauty that felt modern, electric. Norma Jean said yes. The transformation began. Brown curls turned platinum blonde. Shy smiles hardened into practiced allure. Norma Jean became Marilyn Monroe, a name chosen for its rhythm, its glow. With every photo shoot, she learned how to command a gaze, how to turn vulnerability into something magnetic. Men clipped her pictures from magazines. Women copied her makeup, her style. She was no longer invisible, but Hollywood was not kind. Studios courted her, yes, but only on their terms. They wanted the curves, not the craft. Directors dismissed her as decoration. Executives told her she'd never be more than a pin-up, the girl men whistled at but never respected. She was cast in bit parts, secretaries, waitresses, the pretty girl who said little and vanished quickly. Marilyn refused to accept it. She studied acting obsessively, reading Stanislavski, attending classes at the Actors Studio, scribbling notes in margins of scripts. While others laughed at her breathy voice, she trained it until every syllable could seduce, could wound, could linger. She stayed late, rehearsing lines to empty chairs. She wanted more than applause. She wanted legitimacy. Still, the rejections came. Too sexy to be serious, too inexperienced for the lead, too fragile to carry a film. Each note carved deeper
Hear
into her
Marilyn
depths.
sing the fabulous songs of the Roaring Twenties.
She knew what it felt like to be discarded. She swore it would never happen again. Then came the first glimmers of breakthrough. Small Role in the Asphalt Jungle, 1950. Just a few minutes of screen time. But audiences remembered her. A bigger chance followed in All About Eve. She wasn't the star, but she was unforgettable. Hollywood was beginning to notice. Marilyn was on the edge of something enormous. The dream was no longer just survival, it was conquest. The girl who once begged for a home was now stepping onto sound stages, her name whispered in studio hallways, her face plastered on billboards. Fame was close enough to touch. But behind the shimmer, the cracks were already forming. Pills to steady the nerves, affairs that promised love but delivered betrayal, and a studio system that would never let her forget who held the power. The dream had begun, but every dream has a shadow, and Marilyn's was waiting. By the mid-1950s, the dream had come true. Marilyn Monroe was no longer just a model or a supporting player. She was the biggest star in Hollywood. Her films lit up marquees around the world. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, The 7-Year Itch, each one a cultural event. And with every performance,
Now you tore the other one.
image grew brighter, larger, harder to contain. The studio dressed her in diamonds, sequins, and satin, but they also dressed her in an
Well, if they catch me
invisible
once
cage.
more, they're going to kick me out of the
Marilyn
band.
became
and I'm
the
Daphne.
dumb blonde
This is
occupier, the
Josephine.
laughing, breathless siren
be
whose
Sugar
worth
Kowalczyk.
was measured in
Polish?
curves and
Yes.
giggles.
I come from this
Audiences
musical
adored
family,
it.
Ohio.
Critics dismissed it, and deep inside, Marilyn
I played.
seethed.
This isn't much of a band
She
either.
wasn't
I'm
a
only
joke.
with them because I'm
She
running
wasn't
away.
an ornament.
Running away from
She
what?
wanted to prove it.
I'll take a rain
The
check.
studio's contracts were iron, and every
I want you to
rebellion came with
We
punishment.
understand.
All the
Her
girls
personal
drink.
life
It's just
was
that I'm the
no
one that gets
refuge.
caught.
She
Story of
married
my...
Joe DiMaggio, the Yankee Clipper, America's baseball
My
hero.
scene's strong,
To the
girl.
public,
Bye,
they
sugar.
were a golden couple.
We have been playing with the wrong band.
Off the train.
Behind
And I mean,
closed
police, the
doors,
papers, and
it
the
was
mob in
different.
Chicago.
DiMaggio
Boy,
was
free,
jealous,
no butter,
controlling,
no sugar.
enraged at the world's gaze on
Tore 'em
his name.
again.
The famous scene of Marilyn's dress billowing over a subway grate, cheered by thousands, ended their marriage in fury. To him, it was humiliation. To her, it was another escape gone wrong. She tried again with Arthur Miller, the playwright who gave her what DiMaggio never did: words, intellect, the promise of seriousness. For a time, she believed he saw the real woman beneath the glitter. But even that love fractured under the weight of miscarriages, exhaustion, and the relentless press. To the tabloids, she was still just Marilyn, the blonde goddess, not Norma Jean yearning for stability. The pressure mounted. She began arriving late to set, sometimes hours, sometimes not at all. Directors fumed, co-stars whispered, but few understood. Anxiety paralyzed her. Lines blurred in her mind. Sleep came only with the help of barbiturates, and waking required stimulants. Doctors prescribed more, then more again. Her body became a battlefield of pills. And yet, when the cameras rolled, something miraculous happened. Marilyn shimmered. She turned fragility into allure, loneliness into magnetism. In Bus Stop, she proved she could act, really act, earning respect she had craved since her first audition. In Some Like It Hot, she created comedy so effortless that the film became one of the greatest ever made. But behind every glowing review was a toll, nights of tears, hands that shook, a body that betrayed her. Hollywood had given her everything, wealth, fame, immortality. And it had taken just as much, privacy, safety, peace of mind. She was adored by millions, yet profoundly alone. At the height of her fame, Marilyn stood on the edge of a paradox. The brighter the spotlight, the darker the shadows. And those shadows were closing in. By the late 1950s, the cracks in Marilyn's world could no longer be hidden with makeup or reshoots. The tabloids whispered about lateness, about breakdowns, about a star who had become unreliable. The truth was worse than the gossip. Nights blurred into mornings. Doctors passed her from one prescription to another, barbiturates to sleep, amphetamines to wake, sedatives to numb the terror in between. Her bathroom cabinet looked less like a cure and more like a countdown. Miscarriage after miscarriage left her hollow. She longed to be a mother, to hold a child and finally give the love she had never received, but her body betrayed her again and again. Arthur Miller, once her sanctuary, began writing plays that seemed to dissect her flaws in front of the world. One draft described a woman shallow, broken, disposable. She read it, recognized herself, and felt stripped bare. The marriage unraveled. Work no longer felt like refuge. On the set of Some Like It Hot, she kept co-stars Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis waiting for hours. Sometimes, forgetting lines she had repeated a dozen times in rehearsal.
We're just doing this for a laugh.
Yet when the camera turned on, magic. No one else could deliver what she did.
I spent 3 years at the
But
Sheboygan
the
Conservatory of
cost
Music.
was immense. Director Billy
That's
Wilder
good.
called her
Cut me
both
off
a
without a
genius
cent. But I
and a
don't care. It
nightmare.
was such a bore, you
To
know,
Marilyn,
coming out parties.
It was simply survival.
You know, it's amazing.
As
we
the
never ran into each
1960s
other
began,
before. I'm sure
survival became harder.
I beg
Studio
your
executives,
You see, I have
tired
this
of her
theory about
demands,
men who wear glasses.
labeled her difficult.
Tonight,
I thought maybe you could
Insurance
come to the
companies
hotel and hear us
didn't
play.
want her name on
I would
contracts.
goes out.
Oh.
She was
on
fired
account
from
of these
Something's
shells.
Got to
That's
Give
my
after too
hobby.
many absences.
Collect?
That's
The
why we named the oil
humiliation
company after
splashed across headlines. The most famous
Shall I?
woman in the world was now considered unemployable. Off-screen, rumors swirled. Affairs with powerful men. Frank Sinatra, President John F. Kennedy, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. A birthday gala at Madison Square Garden in 1962, where she sang "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" in a dress so tight it was practically liquid, fueled speculation that went far beyond gossip columns. Who was protecting her? Who was using her? And who wanted her silenced? By the summer of 1962, Marilyn was both everywhere and nowhere. Her face in every shop window, her body in every joke, but her spirit slipping away. She called friends at midnight, terrified of being alone. She checked herself into clinics, only to leave days later, restless, desperate. She told confidants she felt trapped, that the walls were closing in. Some believed she was suicidal. Others thought she was preparing for a comeback. Then, on August 5, 1962, the phone lines erupted. A housekeeper found her lifeless on the bed, a bottle of pills at her side. The official verdict? Probable suicide. But the scene was too neat, the questions too many. Who removed the phone records that night? Why were the timelines inconsistent? Why did neighbors report mysterious visitors? The whispers of cover-up spread quickly. Marilyn Monroe had reached the top, only to fall into the abyss the world had built around her. She was 36. The star everyone claimed to love had been consumed by the same machine that created her. In the final stretch of her life, Marilyn Monroe fought to rewrite her own story. For years, she had been dismissed as a fragile puppet, late to set, dependent on pills, too delicate for Hollywood's machine. But beneath the exhaustion was a woman clawing for control, desperate to prove she was more than a headline. After her divorce from Arthur Miller, Marilyn poured herself into self-work. She doubled down on acting lessons at the Actors Studio in New York, surrounded by serious performers who treated the craft like religion. To them, she wasn't just a dumb blonde. She was Norma Jean, trying to be taken seriously. She studied Stanislavski, dissected scripts, practiced until dawn. Her coaches spoke of flashes of brilliance, raw, aching, unforgettable. She also sought healing beyond the studio. Therapy sessions became a lifeline. Friends remembered her speaking about trauma with startling honesty. The absent father, the mother's illness, the abuse, the loneliness. At a time when Hollywood buried such confessions, Marilyn tried to bring them into the light. She read poetry, underlined passages about pain and rebirth, scribbling notes in the margins. This is me. There were sparks of hope. The Misfits, 1961, written by Miller, was intended as her serious breakthrough. On set, tensions raged, but on screen, she delivered one of her most vulnerable performances. Critics saw depth they had long denied her. Marilyn believed this was the start of a new chapter, a career defined not by sex appeal, but by substance. Even after being fired from Something's Got to Give, she refused to surrender. She posed for fresh photographs, radiant, playful, almost childlike, as if announcing, "I am still here. I am ready." She scheduled meetings with directors, whispered to friends about her comeback. She dreamed of roles that would silence the doubters once and for all. There were moments when it seemed she might escape the spiral. She reconnected with Joe DiMaggio, the man who once couldn't bear her fame, but who now brought her roses and promises of stability. Friends said he spoke of remarriage, of rescuing her from the storm. For Marilyn, who had searched her entire life for safe harbor, it felt like a fragile chance at peace. But the fight was uneven. The studio still saw her as a risk. The press still saw her as chaos. The Kennedy rumors, whether true or not, hung over her like a blade. Every phone call, every late-night knock at the door fueled her paranoia. She told some confidants she feared she knew too much, had seen too much. And yet, through the haze, a new Marilyn flickered, one who wanted to live on her own terms. She spoke of starting a production company again, of choosing her scripts, of building a life not defined by men or contracts. "I don't want to be a joke anymore," she once said. "I want to be real." That was the tragedy and the triumph of her last years. Even as her demons tightened their grip, Marilyn Monroe was reaching for transformation. She wasn't finished. She wasn't ready to fade. She was trying, desperately, bravely, to come back. When the news of her death broke on August 5, 1962, the world froze. Radios crackled with disbelief. Newspapers rushed out extra editions. Crowds gathered outside her small Brentwood home as if proximity could make sense of the loss. Marilyn Monroe was gone, 36 years old at the very height of her fame, and forever young in the public's imagination. The official record called it suicide. The rumors called it something darker. For decades, the debates never stopped. Was it an accidental overdose? A cover-up tied to powerful men? A final surrender to the loneliness that had haunted her since childhood? The truth remains uncertain, and perhaps it always will. But the uncertainty became part of her legend. What endures is not the coroner's report, but the image she left behind. Marilyn, in a white dress above the subway grate, laughing as the fabric lifts. Marilyn whispering, "Happy birthday, Mr. President," in a dress sewn with thousands of crystals. Marilyn gazing into the lens with eyes that carried both innocence and devastation. She was more than a starlet. She was a symbol of contradiction, beauty and sorrow, strength and fragility, joy and despair. Her influence rippled far beyond Hollywood. Generations of actresses cited her as inspiration, from Madonna to Lady Gaga. Fashion houses endlessly recycled her silhouette, her platinum hair, her red lips. Feminists debated her legacy. Was she exploited by men, or did she weaponize her allure in a world that gave her few choices? The answer, perhaps, is both. She was victim and survivor, trapped and defiant, broken and resilient. For those who knew her best, the memories were gentler. Friends recalled her generosity, her childlike curiosity, her hunger for books and ideas. Joe DiMaggio, the husband who once lost her to fame, sent roses to her grave 3 times a week for 20 years. Fans from every corner of the world still leave flowers and notes at her resting place, as if speaking to her ghost might bring her peace. In the end, Marilyn Monroe was not perfect. She never pretended to be. She stumbled, she suffered, she searched. But that humanity is what keeps her alive in memory. She was not just an icon painted in gold light. She was Norma Jean, the foster child who fought to be seen, the actress who demanded to be taken seriously, the woman who longed for love and a home. Her story is a reminder that even the brightest stars can carry shadows. That fame does not erase loneliness, that fragility and strength can exist in the same heart. As one critic once wrote, Marilyn Monroe wasn't just looking at the camera, she was looking at us, asking if we could finally see her. Perhaps that is her true legacy. Not perfection, but the light that slipped through the cracks. And in those cracks, millions found themselves reflected